Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast here on the E2KG network. This is the E2KG network. This is Grown Ups Game. We are here. This is October 7th. We are in our deep dive episode, which really means that this is the week that we are diving into the news and industry analysis of the last 2 weeks. Here on the E2KG network with Enough to Keep Going, we come at you every other week with a deep dive kind of news and analysis episode. And in those alternate weeks, we get a chance to take a deep breath, look at what we've been playing, talk about it with you, kind of gather around as some grown-ups who game and talk about what we've been playing. But tonight, we've got lots of news. Gentlemen, over the last month, the last time we've had deep dives, we've had big game announcements, we've had PlayStation showcases, we've had Nintendo Directs, but tonight we just have some quick hits spattering around the game industry, and in true E2KG fashion, we're going to end up with a little bit of financial data, a little bit of legal analysis, but again, none of our hosts are attorneys, and this should not be construed as legal advice. Thank you very much. And joining me tonight is Towmaster99. Tow, how are you tonight?
I am well. I've never said I'm not a lawyer, though.
Oh, that's fair. That is true.
Could be a hobby of mine.
You could be, but you've never claimed that this is official legal advice either. Yes.
That is true also.
Fair enough. And I'm pretty sure not a lawyer as well is Game Logic. How are you, Game?
Specifically put out the specific disclaimer that this is absolutely not legal advice, and nothing that we ever mention should be construed as such.
We might give you some technical specs or some software development pieces, depending on if Game Logic and SwissGuard are on the show, but we never claim that we have. This is not financial market advice, nor this is attorney legal advice. So, but that doesn't stop us from peeling back the layers. Yes, sir.
I think the only legal records that exist for E2KG come back to my name, so I just want to be very hyper-specific about that.
Fair enough. Yes. Now that we have all those disclaimers out of the way, let's dive into our news this week. So yeah, over the last couple of weeks when we've had our deep dive episode, we've had plenty of game announcements. Not a whole lot this week or the last 2 weeks. We do have more kind of updates and kind of reminders that they exist and a couple of announcements here. So, Tal, why don't you start us off with who else is working on the new Perfect Dark? There was nothing out here in the E3, nothing at Gamescom from Microsoft in terms of Perfect Dark, but we do get a little bit more news in terms of who else is helping us with Perfect Dark.
Yeah, so during the 2020 Game Awards, Perfect Dark was announced and I guess shown as it was just kind of like a CG trailer. And the initiative, which is Microsoft's newly formed studio, was going to head that up recently. And I initially got this off of Twitter from the initiative themselves because I started following them once I heard that, just so I can find out information. They announced that they're partnering with Crystal Dynamics from Square Enix, Crystal Dynamics, that did the Tomb Raider series, or the most recent next-gen or new-gen Tomb Raider series, excuse me. So they're going to be collaborating and working together. They didn't really say like what capacity exactly. They kind of just said, hey, we're partnering with them, and they're going to be helping us out. So that was pretty much it in their tweet. And in the article here from WCCF Tech, they don't really go into any more detail as far as that collaboration, but they do mention how the current initiative studio head, Daryl Gallagher, he used to actually head up the Crystal Dynamics studio when the Tomb Raider series was going, and he actually also worked on Deus Ex: Mankind Divided, along with the Rise of the Tomb Raider 20-year celebration. So I don't know if that was kind of the plan all along, maybe that they were going to bring them in for help, or like kind of what's going on, as far as that side of the game is going on. Like I don't know why they had to. I don't want to say had to bring them on, but like I said, I don't know if that was kind of the plan all along to to bring Crystal Dynamics to help out. I don't know. Well, go ahead and comment on that, and then I have another.
No. I was gonna say, like, in some ways, it makes a whole lot of sense that Crystal Dynamics has done some great single player kind of campaign modes in that aspect, but it also makes sense, like, after the struggles that Marvel's Avengers have had, and the fact that Crystal Dynamics continues to try to support that, I could also see where they're potentially looking for some side jobs to help supplement the studio.
Yeah, I can't remember. Wasn't there like a few other like kind of big names or people that they brought into the initiative to head, or not head up the studio, but to kind of bring that studio together? I thought there was a few more people. They don't mention it here, I don't think, that I see, but I could have sworn there's at least like 2 other people that was, came from like big name companies and big games that they worked on. And, that was kind of the big deal.
I don't remember the name specifically, but the whole thing behind this studio, and the reason why there's some angst around this whole story is because this is the quadruple A studio that Microsoft put together, which I don't know if I can lay the blame for that bit of marketing at Microsoft's feet, or if that's a trendy thing that was mentioned in the media that just kind of got away from them. But like, this is the studio that also, like, for like 2 years, like, we didn't know what they were working on, but there were constant news stories from the media about, oh, this person's going to work there, and this person's, and I'm like, guys, they're just hires. Maybe they're big names. I think you guys are trying to make a thing out of a thing that's not really a thing. And then you get this turn in the news trend, which is now, oh, despite all of these, like, super high caliber developers and creatives that we've hired to work here at probably a hefty penny, we're now going to conscript Crystal Dynamics for their help, which is a studio that, while it has great chops and a reputation for the Tomb Raider series, as DBQ mentioned, right, has kind of been panned of most recent with their, attempt at the Avengers.
Yeah, and kind of that was my other thought. Like, okay, so you bring in Crystal Dynamics to help out with the game, and obviously they do like great single player, multiplayer. I mean, it's fine on the Avengers, but I mean, this is kind of a different multiplayer if they go along that track, if they kind of continue with what Perfect Dark was. This is kind of just deathmatch, team deathmatch style of gameplay, and I don't think we've ever seen anything like that from them, as far as I can tell, or as far as I know from Crystal Dynamics. So I don't know if that kind of throws up, not a red flag, but just kind of like, I don't know about this. Like they're going to take this over. But it's possible too, the initiative side maybe we'll just do that part. I mean, I don't know how. Like I said, they don't kind of specify like what's going on with who's doing what. So,
well,
I think that. Go ahead.
Let me ask: Is it? And again, I'm not the Nintendo guy. Isn't PDZ the most heralded multiplayer next to GoldenEye on Nintendo? Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, for first party stuff. Yeah, I would think so.
DB? Yeah. No, I mean, yes. Like in the N64 era, sure, right? If you get into the later of that, you get time splitters, and you end up with people who are, heralding that piece. I think that the example to hold on to here is what Game Logic said of, we get lots of high profile names that have come over to the initiative, but those are creative directors. Those are higher level people. And we all know games take a ton of people to make and to get out the door. And so I could see where, so the initiative has a lot of creative directors that pulling in Crystal Dynamics in terms of some of the, not necessarily grunt work, but getting some of the on the ground, the programming aspects. They've got a studio that's already built for some of this and have staffed up for it, that it's a potential, it makes sense in a collaboration piece.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I wanted to go to, was like, I mean, you look at like Activision with Call of Duty, they have multiple studios, that put their game together. Ubisoft, like, I think they use like every studio for every game usually, or at least more than like 3 or 4. They're using like a dozen.
Yeah, name a continent together. And there's a studio on it.
Yeah. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, that's great. I mean, there's aspect of games that maybe one studio's a lot better at than others. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a big deal. That, I mean, at the very least, it's going to have it should have a fairly good or great single player story, hopefully, or campaign. So,
Okay, Tao, you talked about Ubisoft. Let's jump right into our next story.
Oh man,
we actually get a game announcement here, but it's a free-to-play game, Ghost Recon Frontline.
yes. So Ghost Recon is it's going back to first person at least, but this is more of a battle royale like so far. So it's not a straight up like here's 100. There's going to be 100 people in there, but it's not just 100 people against each other. There's actually teams split up in that 100. And there's actually going to be objectives that you got to do, different like things you have to do throughout the game, and then you have to kind of like extract yourself out of the match to actually win. I'm assuming. So kind of reminds me of, and this is probably going to just be a more high profile game of this, and I haven't played it in a while, and now I can't. Now I totally forgot the game I was going to try to think of. When there's objectives and you can just like escape the map. Basically, it was on the Switch. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's actually I think it's on all platforms.
Unreal Tournament did that, having had modes like that where they were objective based, and you used to have to go around and do like 3 or 4 objectives to like destroy the enemy team's fort. And then the extraction piece. I mean, it's neat that this game is different in a battle royale sense, but I mean the extraction piece is just what Call of Duty Cold War does with VIP. Where you have to escort the VIP and then successfully extract them in order to win the round. Yeah,
it's kind of like a bunch of modes in one. Kind of what this. It's called Expedition, is what they're calling it in Frontline here. It goes right on Frontline. So, but they don't really. I don't think they in this article from PC Gamer. I don't think they talk about the other modes. They just kind of say like, hey, this is their flagship mode is called Expedition. So, with 102 players and teams of 3, that's what it says. So they have to complete objectives, gather intel, defend from other players, and like I said, then they got to escape out of there. So,
you mentioned that there's a control mode, I think, or sort of like a domination mode, where it's you got to control. I'm guessing you have to control 3 points or whatever.
3 points, yeah. And then I guess the other thing too is they have the 3 different classes: the assault, support, and scout classes, which is fairly similar from other games. Assault classes, the close-up fights. Support class has fortification abilities, making obviously you can hold down a point, like obviously in the control modes, and in the scout class, which is you can reveal enemies and pester them from a distance. So probably like a sniper, probably have like sniper guns or something long range. So okay. I mean, I guess I'll try it out. Like I'm always up for any kind of battle royal or battle royal like type of games. I mean, we know we have this one. We have. Was it Defiant? No, not Defiant.
Yeah.
What was the other one that was it Defiant?
The like compilation Tom Clancy
Defiant.
one?
Defiant. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So we have that one. I think that was more like a straight up like P
that
versus,
was more of a
multiplayer
multiplayer one, and then we end up getting the Division. What is that? Not Wildlands, but something. I mean, another one that's more of a survival one that is also a free to play. So Ubisoft's got 3 different kind of vectors into the free to play shooter market.
Oh, we got 4.
Oh yeah. Rainbow Six.
Yeah. What? Rainbow Six.
Traction or Quarantine, the 4-player co-op.
But that's not free to play though, is it?
I don't think so.
No. I mean, I thought you were going to stop me and bring up whatever the Battle Royale Ubisoft game that they released and then kind of pushed off to the side.
Oh, Hyperscape?
Hyperscape, thank you. Yep.
Yeah, that one is like the truest, just Battle Royale, just 100 people or whatever, however many they had in there.
So yeah, not free to play, but still going to be oriented around the same season pass, battle pass.
Around a multiplayer kind of engagement. Yeah, exactly. Good point.
Yeah.
So, Game Logic, you already outed yourself as not the Nintendo guy, but on the list of news stories, you bring up a Splatoon news story. So, how does this strike your radar, and why is this something you want to talk about?
I just want to loop back, if I can. I know we have a huge agenda tonight that we're trying to pound through, but so Tal, it sounded like you were up on this Ghost Recon Battle Royale thing. Is that a positive for you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm always up for any kind of battle royale or battle royale type of game mode. So yeah, I mean, I'll give it a try. It's free to play, so I mean, there's no like severe barrier to entry, to, to it. So yeah, I'll definitely try it. And why it's going back to the roots, I don't know, but um, back to the roots to me is like playing Ghost Recon on PC and going across these kind of huge maps, kind of like how it is here. But you only had like your team against like the AI. So I mean, it's a little weird that they phrase it like that. But I don't know. Maybe it'll feel like that, like if it's a big open world and you're fighting with all these other kind of going back and forth with all these teams. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I
And
can
you
see it being
have to-
interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, something different at least than just a pure battle royale game.
Yeah, not high hopes for me for this one. I knew we knew Ubisoft was making this pivot, and I get it. But as we just kind of counted through, right now, of course, this was the fear. Right now, everything is kind of being vectored in that direction, and that I don't understand. Admittedly, Ghost Recon has not effectively recaptured the magic of the 2001 original release, or even some of the advanced combat releases on Xbox. That it had in the at the turn of the century and in the early 2000s, and so but I'll say that's just me, right? The success story for Ubisoft is that's exactly what they did with Rainbow Six, and there was a large outcry about taking Rainbow Six away from its single player roots, and it's gone on to become one of the most immensely successful game properties on the planet. So it's just I keep hoping for Ghost Recon to get back to a thing that is kind of like how the Division 2 played out. That's what I expected. That's what I was hoping for from the last Ghost Recon, but it didn't quite stick that landing, and now, they're heading off into other lands. So I don't know when we'll get back to that kind of formula for this property or anything really from Ubisoft.
Yeah, I mean, kind of on one hand, I kind of like that they're at least trying something different. Like, I don't mind, like sequels or 2 or 3 times, but then after that, it does. I mean, stuff does get kind of stagnant. Like, all right, at least try something different, and this is something different. Even like with Wildlands and excuse me, Breakpoint. That was they went to third person type of view, and it was kind of open world, and they're trying different things. And yeah, maybe that's because that's what they're doing now. That's what they were doing then. They had all these big open world games, like Watch Dogs and obviously Assassin's Creed. So they kind of try to make all that open world, and it kind of seems like they're doing that now with this. Obviously, a little bit different here and there. Like I said, Defiant is more just kind of multiplayer deathmatch stuff, and then this is going to be kind of battle royale-ish. So I don't know. At least I applaud them for that. Doing something different.
It's different for the franchise, but it's not at all different for the rest of the market, right? It's
right. Yeah.
So we'll just see how it goes. So DBQ asked about Nintendo. So the reason I popped this story up on my radar, and this is a story from Game Informer that talks about Nintendo unveils 2 new Splatoon 3 weapons, and one lets you destroy enemies with surround sound. The reason I put this on my radar is because it's going to sound hypocritical to what I was just talking about with the new Ghost Recon Battle Royale is we don't get a lot of multiplayer shooter games on Nintendo Switch, and the ones that we do get, unfortunately, kind of go underneath the radar when they're third party and don't get brought to the forefront. So, this is an instance where we have a long lead time of the Splatoon announcement before it actually drops. My guess is I'm anticipating next summer. And so we have a lot of time for kind of a rolling thunder marketing campaign and to get a lot of information about Splatoon 3 out there. I'm hoping for another, what was the branding that they put around the worldwide, the global test fire or something?
Global test fire. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm hoping for another kind of thing like that next spring. I had fun playing that. I wound up I think I didn't get Splatoon 2 just because I wasn't certain that the community would be there for me of other people to play with. But I believe Swiss has it and his family plays it quite a good deal. So I'm excited for getting another, turn to maybe get into this on the Nintendo Switch since I passed it up the last 2 times. again, a recent, a strong trend of recent is how, when there are things that gamers don't pay attention to on the market, those things can go away, right? Which is kind of one of my themes that I always beat the drum about in technology. All the devices that I've liked tend to sometimes not be buyed, and then they go away, and then I don't have my thing. So in this particular news story, we got revealed 2 new weapons, and specifically they are the next iteration of the Killer Whale, WAIL, which is a surround sound speaker set that comes out and fires lasers at other opponents. And then we also got the Big Bubbler, which is a shield and protective type power-up that you can lay down to protect yourself and your teammates. Unlike previous iterations, Big Shield's Bubble is stationary and surrounds a lot more than just a single player. So in the past, it could move, but it would only, I guess, protect you, at least you. And now it's stationary and protects a wider area. So some cool new iterations that will surface some new tactics. And so kind of like in that Apex Legends type of way, it's nice to kind of see these new weapon iterations that'll kind of drive people to different behaviors, to see how things play when different teams mix and match different weapons, packages, and loadouts. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point there, right? Like the weapon variety really changes the dynamics in those games. I gotta also say, it's pretty fun to hear you say the bubbler and the kind of tongue-in-cheek Splatoon weapons as you're wearing a Call of Duty Modern Warfare shirt. So, right, like it is the beauty of the breadth and scope of E2KG is on full display tonight. So, speaking of which, let's jump from cartoony and real world first person shooters into the world of Peter Moore and soccer and sports games as we look at FIFA 22. So FIFA 22 is coming out. We got some news this week over not only their player base, but also some other potential news. Game Logic, do you want to stay on the mic for this one?
Have hard and certain sales numbers, but what this article reports also on Game Informer, FIFA 22 scores over 9 million players, EA considering name change for franchise, which sounds like one drum beat and then the other shoe dropping. But what they've seen statistics-wise is 9.1 million players have been online on the game, or just they have telemetry that shows that many people have been playing. 7.6 million Ultimate Team squads created. So I know that there are plenty of FIFA players who don't play Ultimate Team. So this tells me that there are players in a core community that is making multiple Ultimate Team squads. And then 460 million matches have been played. This game only launched like 5 days ago. 6 days ago on October 1st. So it's pretty amazing. The FIFA 2021 was 15th last year in gaming sales total for the entire year. And again, in similar vein as the Call of Duty drop, that's for a game that just launches in the last 3 months of the year. So it's pretty amazing and pretty impressive. And we know that FIFA and its approach towards microtransactions and Ultimate Team is kind of one of the golden key franchise for EA Sports, and how they keep that monetization wheel rolling.
Yeah, that is so very true. And it's also been one of the kind of linchpins in the European Union's regulation on loot boxes and things as well. Yep.
Another part of this story is that EA is talking about changing the name, and so it's interesting to speculate what the dynamic is behind that. The contractual roots behind it is that FIFA, if you've played it, has teams in it that are not solely for the bare amount that I understand soccer. I do play FIFA, but I don't really, I watch the regular sport and really fully understand the sport. Probably the greatest extent of my knowledge is we recently subscribed to Apple TV, and so we've been watching Ted Lasso. So I understand more about the sport of soccer as much as Ted Lasso informs me. But there are other I'll call them, smaller leagues that are also signatories to the partnership and licensing deal with FIFA. About 300 in total, which is just really amazing, which means it runs all the way from the top tier premier clubs all the way to some very smaller clubs. But all of this is done so that EA has rights to include player models and likenesses throughout the entire game for those players who want to play like the top tier teams all the way down to the small local kind of municipal level football clubs. So, and it sounds like that. And so what they're talking about doing is changing the name so it's not just FIFA. And at least at face value, that sounds like it's egalitarian and is trying to give some credence and some head nodding and acknowledgement to the fact that the world of soccer is not just FIFA. And so that sounds neat and it sounds nice. There may also be some maneuvering going on behind the scenes that maybe FIFA is asking for more money for their license and EA is saying, you're not going to be able to hold us hostage. Could very well be that EA is maneuvering now and early to try and not find itself in the same situation that Sony Interactive Entertainment found themselves with Major League Baseball, where they pretty much came in and dictated to Sony what they were going to do with that franchise. So you guys have any thoughts or additional analysis on this one?
Well, I mean, that last piece there is something I've been thinking about, just thinking of the economics of the situation, where EA is probably playing more proactive in this because they've caught they've caught themselves off guard with NBA, and they've been locked out of things in terms of, or priced out of things with the NBA license when 2K re-upped. And as we talk about the the MLB license, yeah, I think that this is probably the combination of, there is a technical aspect that teams pop in and out of the top tier leagues within various continents, whether it's Brazil or Europe, that depending on how teams perform, they can bounce in and out of the Premier League.
Are you speaking of relegation?
Oh, thank you for the correct term.
And promotion, yes. Which again is another thing that I was just introduced through Ted Lasso. So
excellent. Thank you very much. Ted. Yes. Excellent. Yeah. I mean, right. Like, this does kind of cover them for those types of just the fluidity of world's football. So, but I think it also is probably, and rightfully so, EA is still a corporation and a business. And so they are thinking about how do they position themselves in such a way that, given the strong player base that they've seen with FIFA 22, how do they maintain that growth, that stability when they've lost out in some of their other sport franchises? Anything else, Tao, before we jump on to the next one?
Nope, not for this one.
All right. Well, let's jump from sports to remakes. So Bluepoint officially joins Sony in terms of first party studios. So Bluepoint Games not only did the PlayStation 5 remake of Demon's Souls, they have also been the lead on the PlayStation 4 Shadow of Colossus. They've been part of a number of different remakes, remasters within the PlayStation family. And so this was one that was telegraphed, one that was kind of expected, and now it is technically official. So this Bluepoint now joins some of the other acquisitions that we've seen from PlayStation over the last 6 months in terms of Housemarque, Returnal, and Resogun. Also the PC port Nixus, which has done a number of not only PlayStation game PC ports, but also Nixus was involved with, calling back to earlier in the podcast, with Marvel's Avengers. They were involved there as well. So Sony is rounding out some of their studios, some of the things that have kind of been second party in terms of doing a lot of work for PlayStation, now are being brought under the official first party banner. Any thoughts here, gentlemen, before we jump on to another story?
Yes, definitely. So
Okay.
I feel like Sony, in what Jim Ryan tries to message, it's this very casual. It's very casual. It's an attempt to convey, I feel like, a very casual approach to acquisitions, and then Herman Hulst is also conveying a very it's a casual but also a laser targeted approach to acquisitions, and almost to a point where it seems like it tries to make people feel like we're not on an acquisition campaign. We're just doing things that have been lining up for years, and that makes sense. I don't know that I buy that. I feel like there's definitely an effort, granted strategically and carefully, but there's an effort to bolster and fill the coffers, right, and stack the talent pool in direct opposition and competition to what Microsoft has been doing. Now they're buying they're buying studios that I don't think Microsoft would ever go after, and I don't necessarily know that they're playing a game of keep away, but there's an attempt to definitely buffer themselves to some level of parity, right, with a similarly increased size of overall talent pool. Am I way off on that, or is this as casual and nonchalant as I feel like their public statements have been trying to convey?
So I'll say that it may appear casual and nonchalant, but is certainly strategic, right? I mean, if you can draw some pretty direct lines in terms of not only support for their IPs and things that they've touted within kind of that first party or exclusivity windows, but also in terms of the direction that Sony Games is going, not only with PlayStation 5, but with PC ports and the relative benefit of that. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is very much portfolio building more than it is like, oh, sure, we like these guys, and it just makes sense that they're on board. Yeah, this is still a business.
Just the one thing I kind of got out of the article, it's kind of nice that they said their next project is some original, so it's not just like another port. So it's nice, they're not just coming in to be a port machine. It looks like, hopefully, we'll see if that bears fruit or not. But it looks like that's they're just going to do something on their own this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've earned their chops, and so that's great to hear. My snarky response to that is I bet that the developers at Sony Bend would be very glad to have that conversation about the ability to make their own original IP. But let's jump off of the Sony snark and into, in true E2KG fashion, we're going to talk about some financial news. And while we have been talking about Sony and Nintendo and the other consoles, really the big news story here for me is the fact that the Wall Street Journal is kind of combing over the information from the Apple court case, and that their financial reports show that Apple would have earned $8.5 billion from gaming in 2019. Billion. And so this is $2 billion more than if we combine all the profits from Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, and Activision Blizzard. This to me is, for as much as we, not only us in the hobbyist aspect, but also the games media, leverage our relationships and the importance of console and PC gaming, this is one of those that just kind of, not only it opens your eyes, right? It is the sun staring down at you. It is the gut punch of, yeah, your console games are nice, but mobile gaming is where the real money is generated. and I think that it's not a surprise, but to see it in this stark of numbers really drives it home. Oh no, your delicious commentary is muted.
That might be bad because that means I was unmuted before. So sorry if anybody heard any sniffles and sneezing. So I've been given over of late to really think about and consider. There's an analogy to this, but it starts with my consideration of Game of the Year awards and how there is some nonsense in some ways about a discussion that compares something like Death Stranding to Call of Duty. And we've historically been okay working along these genre definition lines and then still throwing everybody in the same pool. The analog to this is that I'm starting to think that it's I don't know that I'm okay with, and not UDB, because this is the media does this and the market does this and Wall Street does this, but I don't know
take it. Throw it at me.
I don't know that I'm okay with these things being treated as the same markets, because I don't think that they are. I think that there's more and more as time has gone on, and the mobile gaming market has gotten bigger and bigger, and as you mentioned, is kind of a true moneymaker. I struggle with the concept of accrediting it as the gaming moneymaker, because I think they're inherently different markets. And I know people aren't going to like this, but I would say where the big gains over, I'll call them traditional gaming, are made, is they are made in the because there's an idle time gaming knock-on effect that you can't have with consoles. You can't play your console while you're standing in line, right? You can't play your console in the car while your mom is taking the kids to, like, on a 15-minute trip to soccer. You don't have, and market penetration is different because the demographics are so largely different, because you have kids who have these lower scale mobile devices, right? Even like I just recently picked up like an iPod Touch, and I was buying it because I wanted to hedge my bets against my iPod Classic tilting over, and I was reading a lot about like the market. And I'm like, why does Apple still have this in the product lineup? And they have it because it's an entry level device for kids whose parents don't want to give them a phone with telephony.
Oh, that's so interesting. I was just talking with my son about his iPod Touch from like a decade ago.
Right.
And I didn't even realize that they were still out there in terms of new products.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the last time they refreshed it was 2019, right? So it's going into its third or fourth product year, but it's still in the lineup.
But that's exactly why my son got it. Was right. He was in third grade, and so here's a device that doesn't have a mobile plan to it.
Right. And so when you talk about the console market, you talk about something that starts, I mean, you can't even start with the Nintendo Switch now. It's still flabbergasted that when we talk about starting the entry level, we're still talking about the Xbox Series S. But you start with the Xbox Series S, and you scale all the way up to a gaming PC, and you have a radically different market of people who have a higher demand for performance, right, and on-prem capability, and you have a market that's completely different in terms of most business models of uptake and consumership. So I don't like this I get it. I get this comparison. I don't know, like, we don't, there are lots of like Flash-based games, right, on PC, like your grandmom playing like Texas Hold'em, right? We acknowledge those things as gaming activities, but we don't really talk about them. And we know that there's money there, but we don't really compare them again to FIFA 22, right, or Madden. And so I don't know, but all, great for Apple, who really, as far as I'm concerned, could care less about gaming. Just makes it feasible on their platform, but doesn't really do much beyond that to really prop it up, and yet they're still gaining like billions of dollars from it. Like, it's the largest revenue gain that I've seen from a company that is so apathetic, in my opinion, towards like the development of the thing, that it's kind of sad in some ways.
Well, and I think it also potentially shows, well, commentary wise, it potentially shows the scope of Apple's profits, right? Like if 8 billion is, we got 8 billion, great. Or we didn't have to do anything and we still got 8 billion. Why should we invest more money into this if we got 8 billion, right? I mean, I can see either one of those arguments being bandied about in a boardroom. Thanks for giving us the Skype work from home.
But to make another comparator statement, right? They made enough in a year to have bought Bethesda and pocketed $1 billion, right? And they make not one iota of the type of effort, investment, voice track, community participation that any of those other companies do.
You're talking about Microsoft?
No, I'm talking about Apple.
But Apple didn't buy Bethesda.
No, I'm saying they could have. I'm saying they made enough in a year to have bought Bethesda and still pocketed $1 billion, right? And they're nowhere on the gaming scene in presence in the same manner that Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, and Activision are.
Yeah, right. And I think another piece of this will be as the settlement with Epic concludes, and that Apple has to open up their markets, their storefronts to other payment transactions. How developers end up taking advantage of that, or if that actually chips into this, right? Like, as we just said, it's not like they're investing a whole lot in sales of Apple related video game products. This is the majority of it is it's transactional fees coming out of their user base.
Well, and that's the thing, right? That $8.5 billion, that is almost entirely the 30% kicker that they get off the transactions, right? That's not from selling anything of their own that they make. That's not from hardware sales. That's not from any games that they make. There is no first-party Apple gaming studio. It's just pretty amazing.
Yeah. No, I think I agree, right? I mean, I think that this is a really interesting piece, and I think it's also a very fair argument to make that this does not have to be one singular industry, right? Like game development, games as a medium do not have to be both mobile games and console PC games, right? Like we don't look at books as all one medium. We don't look at visual storytelling, whether it's TV or movies, is all one medium, right? Like it is potential to look at things in a variety of mediums and still be kind of in that larger banner of games. And I think that's an important distinction that within the last 20 years of game analysis, game critical analysis, has been something that has not been possible until we get to kind of where we are within the last few years. Like the medium itself is broad enough that we do not have to count all games as the same kind of artistic or entertainment expression.
And that's a lot of what I've been noodling on, right? We don't talk about television and movies in the same context, right? Either financially or from a viewership perspective, right? We've separated those things. The TV has their Emmys, right? Movies has the Oscars, right? They've moved to different fields of conversation, and I feel like that is the thing that I feel like needs to start happening in the gaming conversation and in gaming media.
Yeah, I'll stick with you on that one. So let's move on from the evolution of games as an entertainment and artistic expression into games and their legal aspects. So not only in true E2KG fashion can we talk about some financial data, but let's dive into a little bit of legal analysis. And as we talked about at the top of the show, disclaimer, none of this is official legal advice. So We have the $18 million. Last week, we have an $18 million settlement fee or kind of commitment from Activision Blizzard over their lawsuit with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So the last time we talked about Activision Blizzard, Gascally's Game Logic, you talked about the EEOC and one of the many lawsuits that were coming up against Activision Blizzard, not only the state of California and others, but also the EEOC. And we also had the SEC investigating Activision Blizzard as well. But this past week, we had Activision Blizzard commit $18 million to in the settlement around sexual harassment and discrimination. That the idea with that money is it's not only to compensate eligible employees who are harassed or faced discrimination, but also to strengthen its workplace anti-harassment and anti-discrimination policies. So this is a pretty significant commitment in terms of $18 million. Again, we just got done talking about $8 billion. So there is some perspective here. But the other piece of this is, yes, so they settled with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, but that also has some knock-on effects with other lawsuits that Activision Blizzard is still engaged with. And so today we had the state of California stepping in, the Department of Fair Employment and Housing step in to file a motion to intervene into this settlement with the EEOC and Activision Blizzard because of the potential ability for the settlement to damage evidence within an ongoing investigation and lawsuit around the state of California, which is the one who initiated this. And if you remember, the state of California was also the one a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago at this point, who also cited evidence of Activision Blizzard shredding documents related to their pending lawsuit. So the state of California, the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, has said that the settlement, the terms of the settlement, provide the opportunity for Activision Blizzard to effectively, potentially destroy evidence that is relevant to another ongoing investigation. So the legal mess of Activision Blizzard does not stop. That, yes, they may be taking some good steps to settle some things, but in true legal fashion, nothing is isolated, that there are things that are dependent on each other. And so as one thread gets pulled and reverberates, we have some effects here with some of the other lawsuits. And we have not heard the end of this, gentlemen. This is not the end. This is more of an update of, like, it seems like Activision Blizzard was trying to settle and move on past the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and their lawsuits with this $18 million. And now it may kind of be held up a little bit because of the nature of how many of these things are kind of interwoven between each other and dependent on evidence that's connected in multiple cases. So that the idea here is that that there is the potential that personnel files could have been eliminated or kind of suppressed within this. So we'll see. That this is a developing story, as in all things related to Activision Blizzard. It seems like over the last 2 months, everything is a developing story around the legal aspects of this. But when they think they have turned a page and maybe getting a little bit of good PR about settling and acknowledging their issues, there are still more problems coming up for Activision Blizzard. Gentlemen, any other thoughts on here before we move on out of our legal segment and back into things that we are more confident and competent to talk about? All right.
This is a big mess. Like
yes, that is fair, right? Like, if we thought the Apple Epic lawsuits were a mess, the fact that we now have both state and federal government agencies involved with a game publisher, it's a hard one, right? I mean, I think, and you've seen this in the news over the last few weeks with the release of Diablo Resurrected, that you had the developers, you had the people both at Blizzard, but also at Vicarious Vision, who said, they understand and encourage people to support their conscience, whether they think that it needs to be, purchasing a new Blizzard game is something that is unconscionable for them based on the current lawsuits, or the fact that, yes, there are current lawsuits, but there are a lot of other hardworking, dedicated, compassionate people who are toiling underneath those companies and those structures. So yes, the fact that we've got a game release, we get next week, I think we get a Hearthstone release to see with Mercenaries, that, it will be interesting. Overwatch had their finals a few weeks ago in late September. We had a little bit of more news about Overwatch 2, but all of this comes, at the same time as you hear Overwatch 2. We talked about this last time on the deep dive, with Overwatch 2's lead developer and designer stepping away. And so it is encouraging with one hand and also discouraging with another. So
I just want to mention, so it's only a mess for Activision if they don't get away with it, right? And like, arguably some of the stuff that Apple has been going through,
right? Yeah,
right. I mean, arguably some of the stuff that Apple has been going through, even if you go all the way back to like the Samsung Apple lawsuits, right? This stuff, but recently the stuff with Epic, it's only a problem for Apple if Apple doesn't get away with it, and Apple tends to get away with it. They tend to get a little hand slap, right? A little public criticism, but I mean, nothing that really impacts them. This, and again, we're looking at a Kotaku article. Kotaku's had its own recent issues with how it's viewed in the gaming community, so take that with a bit of salt. But I'm reading from the things that the Kotaku article highlights. This EEOC settlement is really kind of stinky, and is this a problem for Activision, or is it a problem for the U.S. government? Because there's lots of things in here where, at least the picture that's being painted here, is that the EEOC was a bunch of eager beavers trying to get their pound of flesh, right, in the race ahead of the other government agencies that are also in pursuit, and so did a lot of things out of norm of procedure, where there were things that they're required to inform, wait periods that they're supposed to stand by and wait for the earlier case that had already been filed to move forward, that they didn't. And that's clearly, to me, again, just to read, sounds like a government staffer trying to make themselves look good, right? So we'll see how it falls out, but I mean, and then there's things in here where Activision is allowed to purge things from records after they've been notified of the names that the EEOC has, and then this other thing that says, hey, if we don't find the people who the settlement funds are supposed to go to, we're allowed to reinvest them in our own programs. Those things are problematic, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, right? There's a lot of this that reads, it's a rush to the headlines more than it is going through and due diligence in terms of any type of potential, podium justice that a government agency may try to get. Yeah, there's a number of pieces here that are circumspect and not necessarily favorable to Activision, but also it is, I think it's exactly what you said, of there are compensations, considerations that are given in order to expedite the settlement here. Okay, let's move on from our legal news hour into, let's wrap this up, gentlemen, with a little bit of hardware news and services updates here. So we've got both a little bit of hardware in terms of the SteelSeries, but also a little bit of Sony news to wrap us back around to where we started as well. So, Tao, why don't you jump back here on the mic and talk a little bit about the SteelSeries?
Yeah, so Jabra's owner GN is actually acquiring SteelSeries, which is reportedly worth the deal would be worth $1.24 billion with a B, and the deal is expected to close early of 2022. So, if you know what SteelSeries is, they make gaming like headphones and just kind of peripherals and stuff like that. I believe they make mice and keyboards too, right? Game Logic. Okay, that's what I thought. So this is just a way for Jabra and Jabra, they make what I know them for is kind of like headsets and or not headsets, but like headphones and like Bluetooth is. I remember I bought a lot of Bluetooth wireless headsets and stuff like that, earbuds.
Yep,
I
I've
think
got lots
I
of
even had,
Jabra. Yep, both at
yeah,
work
had
and
some of their health
running.
tracker things, wrist, yeah. So they make that kind of stuff. So they're kind of like expanding their horizons and going into gaming, which I mean, very smart. I mean, it's a big business nowadays. So there's other brands like Astro and Elgato, and they're getting bought or buying out stuff. Other smaller companies, or not small companies, but other companies too. So I think this is just another way for them to expand on what they're doing. And I just brought it up just because I mean, and I have nothing against Jabra and GGN. I mean, they're probably just like a big conglomerate or whatever company that buys people. But I just like the SteelSeries. They're probably like one of the best headsets I've had, other than some of the HyperX ones a couple of the HyperX ones that I've had too. They're way up there on the scale and pretty affordable. I think I bought mine maybe like 2 years now, and it was fairly inexpensive, like under $100, wireless for my Switch, because I was looking for a wireless headset at the time, because you couldn't do this is one where you have to plug into the one I got is you have to plug into the dock with a little receiver. Now you can actually do Bluetooth natively on the system, but this is before that. But and it is excellent sound, and the mic was good for when I was able to use it on certain games here and there, obviously because of Nintendo and they're online, but that's another story. But no, I just thought it was an interesting article that I didn't hear. I mean, maybe I tried to keep up with tech and stuff like that, but I hadn't heard any rumblings about them buying any companies or anything like that. So I just thought it was kind of interesting to see them going out and buying the SteelSeries brand.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like it is two quality names within the industry, but not necessarily dominant names within the industry. And so there's a logic here of combining them together. Any thoughts here, Game Logic, before we jump on to the final story of the night?
Well, the thought here is that you always worry when something like this goes down as to whether or not the quality, right, that and the elegance that goes into a revered product line gets sullied when it's acquired by a company that may be perceived to be a little bit more of a commodity, right? My big concern was, again, being a person who plays a lot of flight sims, was when SciTech was acquired by Mad Catz, right? And SciTech was this high premier gaming peripheral company, and Mad Catz was like bottom of the barrel, race to the bottom, low price thing. And then Mad Catz was acquired by Logitech, and there was a dip in SciTech quality, and then it picked back up with its acquisition by Logitech. We will leave my commentary about Logitech software to some other thing, but so SteelSeries is, I think, arguably one of the best headset companies that are out there. An interesting thing is another thing that they produce is controllers for the mobile space. So you may have some synergies there where there are SteelSeries mobile controllers for like Android and iOS that could be packaged with Jabra Bluetooth headsets for mobile phones. So those things could go hand in hand. That'll be the interesting thing to see if there's any reduction in SteelSeries quality. I think a big trend that I've seen in headsets in the gaming space is so many more of these headsets that are tri-mode, and so they are proprietary wireless They have a 3.5mm port, so you can use them in wired format, not in battery-powered wireless mode. But then they also have Bluetooth, so that you can connect them to a laptop that's equipped with Bluetooth or a mobile phone. So I might expect to see more of that, and we may actually see some things that are better in their ability to tap into Jabra's expertise in that domain. So it's an interesting move. Of course, Elgato acquired by Corsair, Astro acquired by Logitech, and surprise move that I hadn't caught, Rocat acquired by Turtle Beach. That would be another thing where I would be concerned about maybe Rocat being a very, very high-end premier quality, I think German gaming peripheral company being acquired by Turtle Beach, which has had its problems with quality control in the past. So,
I didn't know about that last one with Turtle Beach.
Yep.
So that's interesting. All right. So let's end with a little bit of maybe potentially good news, as Sony is rolling out some PlayStation 5 game trials. Game Logic, take us home.
as is typically the case with Sony and their business moves, I am left confused by some of the implementations of this. But the good news, as DBQ mentioned, was that at least in the UK, which it appears where they're trialing this, you will be able to download some games that Sony designates and play them for a trial period. And so this, to me, is akin to kind of the EA Play service that allows people to download things early and play a certain amount of time before the game actually releases. This being done in a slightly different manner. It's games that already exist on the market and giving you a chance to toe dip in and see what they're about. The two that they are that are on offer for utilization in the trial are Death Stranding, specifically the Director's Cut, and Sackboy: A Big Adventure. So I don't know. I haven't looked at. Does Director's Cut? I don't know that Director's Cut plays on a PlayStation 4, so is that a PlayStation 5 only?
Yeah, the PlayStation 5 is the only place for the Death Stranding Director's Cut. Yes.
Okay, so that's an interesting play there. But the elements of this that cause me some confusion is the amount of time that you get to play the games are 6 hours for Director's Cut and 5 hours for Sackboy. Now, I don't know a lot about Sackboy, but I have been playing Death Stranding. And 6 hours of gameplay in Death Stranding, I don't know that nets you a whole heck of a lot to really give you an impression of the game. That's a 40 to 50 hour game. I don't know that 6 hours would be enough to tip somebody over to drive them to the purchase point. But the other thing that's problematic in this is that the timer starts, and this is another thing that's very similar to the way Steam does stuff with its refund rules, which bother me, is the timer starts as soon as you hit the download trial button. So depending on what your bandwidth is, who knows how long it's going to take you to download Death Stranding Director's Cut, which I have to go back and look. Surprisingly, Death Stranding Director's Cut I don't think is as big as I would think. It may only be 35 to 40 gigs. But still, right, however big it is, it's going to be dependent on your bandwidth, and that may suck up a certain amount of your gameplay time. If it starts the timer then, during your download period, I'm absolutely certain that it does the thing that Steam's telemetry does that bothers me, which is if you're paused or sitting on the menu, it's counting that time. If you start the game, get through a certain point, and then it crashes or whatever, that time's against your counter, but if you lose your progress, then it still counts against you. So, it's a thing, but it's at least an attempt. At least people will get an opportunity to kind of experience. I will say from my recent but my recent foray into Death Stranding, one of the things that's most striking about it, if you're on it only plays on PlayStation 5, is the visual panache that title has, and that is something that you don't need 6 hours to walk away from to realize that it's arguably the best looking game on PlayStation 5 right now. So you can get that in less than 6 hours and make your decision off that alone in some cases.
Well, and as somebody who's played Sackboy, I could say that 5 hours is a lot of playtime in that game, right? I mean, this is a kind of Super Mario 3D World-esque game, and so there's a lot of meat that you could get out of 4 to 5 hours. And, you may not be able to unlock everything, but you're going to be able to tell if this is a game that you enjoy.
6 hours in Death Stranding, you probably spending 4 hours in cutscenes.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Kojima. Yes. Very, very true. All right, gentlemen, we have hit on a whole bunch of topics, not only in terms of game announcements and collaborations, but also our obligatory financial and legal briefs and a little bit of hardware deep dives, as well as we talked about the acquisitions in a number of areas. And as we wrapped up here with some game trials from Sony, anything else that popped up on your radar over the last 2 weeks in terms of news and analysis that we want to hit on before we head out for the evening? All right. So yesterday, the Battlefield 2042 early access beta launched for those that have pre-ordered or those that are EA Play members. I played a little bit. I died a whole lot. I clipped through the environment, but we'll talk about that some more next week because that is our Pix Plays assignment here and the E2KG network as grown-ups who game. Not only are we going to hold our kids accountable for their homework, but we are going to hold ourselves accountable for our homework as well. And so our Pix Plays assignment for next week is, as we think about games that have gone hot and cold over the last few years, and also games that have kind of hot or cold betas. Sometimes that is a result of the community. Sometimes that's a result of the build, whether it's an outdated build or a modern build. So for the next GX show, over the last few weeks, we've had a number of betas that have come up. The three of us on this podcast had a chance to play a little bit of the Halo Infinite beta. Thank you, Game Logic. It was great to jump in with you last week on the Halo Infinite beta, but also, as I just said, the Battlefield 2042 beta. There's a number of other early access and betas that have gone on. And so our assignment here is to dive into one of those early access games, one of those betas, whether it's a preview, whatever different label that is coming up, and give it a try. Give it a try, and maybe you'll have some fun. Maybe you'll have some concerns, but our Pix Plays is to come back and to report your findings. Not only is how does this shape your perspective of the game, but also what's the experience here? I spent the last few nights on Steam's Game Fest that they had a number of indie game demos that have been playable until from the 4th to the 7th of October. And so I've been kind of piling through some of those early builds on some indie games as well. So lots of potential vectors where we can experiment and try out some upcoming games for our next Pix Plays assignment. So, and that is next week. Next week, Thursday, October 14th, there's a GX show. Not only will we be talking about our report outs for the Pix Plays assignment, but also anything else that we've been playing over the last 2 weeks. On the episode is most definitely Towmaster 99 and Swissguard, but you never know if Game Logic or myself, DBQ Hams, may jump in because we've just got to talk about our experiences. This is the beauty of the E2KG network is, as grown-ups who game, we know that our time is important. We know that our game hobby is valuable, but we also know that your time with us is important as well. So thanks for joining us tonight, tomorrow, the next day, whenever you are watching or listening to us. And for myself, DBQ Hams, Game Logic, and Towmaster 99, this has been the Enough to Keep Going podcast on the E2KG network. For all of us here, to all of you out there, play the games you love those you play with, and take care of each other. Good night, everybody.